Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Alaka Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley, hosting today, and I'm very pleased to have Ed Truman with us. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, everyone.
So both of us are based in Leicester today, and it's not looking particularly pleasant out there, but we've got people from all over the country, and usually we have quite a few people in from Europe joining us. So welcome to you all. Just a little bit of housekeeping, what's going to happen. So the presentation takes about 50 minutes. We'll open the questions up at the end for a little bit of a conversation. But if you want to ask any questions during the presentations, I will have a go at answering them. I've been working with Ed to try and make sure that everybody knows what's going on with this. We will start off in a second with just some polls. And just to let you know that the slides and the video will be available afterwards, but you can go and grab the handouts now. So the handouts are available top right. There is a button there to press. And the video takes a couple of hours to circulate, so you might find you get that about lunchtime. So I think the best thing for us to do is go straight into the poll. And let's start with that. So I'm going to start the polling. It's got quite a lot of choices today, but I'll read it out for the benefit of the video. So what is the status of your cookie consent pop-up or cookie consent banner on your website? This is not currently relevant to me. I'm a student or unemployed. We've got a learners that join our webinars, so you may be one of them. My company does not currently have a website. I'm sure that you're going to fix that in the very near future. My company has a website, but I have not noticed, or we don't have a cookie consent pop-up yet. Now, it could be that you've been on your website so many times that you don't actually notice it. So it might be that you do have one and that you're not aware of it. And if you want to check that, if you go on a browser, you can check a browser you don't use very often and you'll probably notice it. We have a cookie consent pop-up, but I'm not sure what it does or if it works properly. We have a cookie consent pop-up and or we are looking to at cookie consent software, which is something that Ed is going to tell you about today. We're currently compliant and are aware of Google's new consent mode 2, so we are actively updating. I'm not expecting too many people doing that. We have already upgraded some or all of our sites, but wanted to learn more about the background. There might be a few from other agencies that know about this, but they're interested to hear what you got to say, Ed. Can we have some help to update ours? Yes, we will. We will put a little link at the end if any of you want to get some help. So the way it's looking at the moment is the biggest number is around. We have cookie consent pop up and we're looking at consent software. So I think that's really useful to know. That's about 22%. It's quite split today, actually. A few people that are compliant and are trying to actively update. And then we've got, about 20% or maybe even 35% either haven't got one or don't know if it's working, which is sort of what I expected, really, quite a spread. But I don't think people realise there's this deadline. So I think that's probably quite an important aspect of what Ed's talking today. So what I'll do is I'll turn my camera off. I'll reappear when you get to the end of your slides and we can answer some questions. So it's over to you, Ed. See you later.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's talk, my presentation on Google Consent Mode. Specifically with regard to the latest version, which are calling Consent Mode V2. So kind of a intimidating technical kind of title we have right there, Google Consent Mode V2, deadline March. So for some of you who may already be using some type of cookie management platform you may be subscribed and signed up to, this might not actually be a problem for you guys, and you might just need to be aware of these new mandatory regulations being set by Google that are coming out shortly. So you might just want to just be informed. But at this stage, I don't want you to necessarily panic straight away. I'm going to go through it. We're going to take it step by step, and I'll talk you through what it is exactly. What you need to put in place to actually abide by consent, and have your tags set up and be compatible for this consent mode. So let's first hit you with what you need to know. So in March 2024, so in a couple of months' time, Google will require all advertisers, and this is advertisers within the EU and the economic area, and it does include the UK as well, to utilize the latest version of its consent mode platform if you want to make use of audience targeting. So when we talk about audience targeting, we're talking about things mainly related to individuals and the tailoring and personalization of ads. So think about your ad targeting when you create audiences, your remarketing lists, your in-market audiences, when you go after specific interest categories and things like that. That aspect of advertising, you will now need specific consent for. So this is what this presentation's all about. So what is being affected in a nutshell? So things that are being affected are your Google remarketing audience building capabilities. So this is your in-market audiences, your interest categories, things of that nature. So anything which requires the personal information, demographic information, behavioral information based on users that have visited your website, users that are browsing the internet. If you want to make use of those types of features within the advertising you do, you're going to need to implement these new changes and make sure you have them present on the website. So the biggest changes that Google's now making is mandatory in order to use these features. So I want to make it clear that your advertising, if you're using Google Ads, your advertising will not stop. Your advertising will continue to run. Your Google Analytics will continue to run. But what it means is that if you are using these audience-based features, these remarketing lists and things of that nature, and even if you're importing audiences from GA4, into Google Ads, those will also be affected. And with that loss also comes the potential that the data modeling benefits you would get from usually using Google Consent Mode will be lost. One of the biggest benefits of using Consent Mode in the first place, which we're obviously going to talk more about shortly, is the fact that we can use Google data modeling in order to make up for any kind of conversion loss that may occur. So you have the potential to lose out on the data modeling benefits as well. Okay, so ad delivery, conversion tracking will continue to work as normal, provided that you're doing your normal consent due diligence and you are allowing users to opt in and opt out. So as long as you're abiding by basic consent, your tags and everything will continue to fire as normal. So this is specifically with regards to remarketing and audience building capability. So if you're wondering what does this all really mean? First, it's probably best to backtrack to understanding when and why consent is actually needed in the first place. So as part of GDPR, as part of e-privacy, the regulations that have been around for some time now, since 2018, those types of regulations are only becoming more and more enforced and relevant. And we've, of course, seen a lot of changes happen across the industry in recent years, and the advent of more and more cookie pop-ups and the requirement to obtain consent from users for marketing purposes. So that's why we're seeing all these cookie banner pop-ups, cookie notices, the need to manage cookies, respect user consent, keep records, manage your tags more proficiently is becoming ever more important. So people are increasingly expecting more controls on the data they share about themselves online, and Google is providing you with tools for you to respect users' choices. So all of this is about Google trying to become more compliant with global legislation, regional legislation around privacy and user choice. So it's providing advertisers with more and more tools and abilities to be able to manage consent on their websites. And Google Consent Mode and this latest update is just another evolution of that. These are just extra features that Google are bringing out to help advertisers and provide more control. And to be honest with you, it's also to assist with Google's data modeling and the fact that Google is obviously acquiring less and less data now in general. So it's having a harder time in being able to marry up things like ad clicks with conversions when people opt out of cookie consent. So if I opt out of cookie consent on my website, then all of the activity that happens in between the ad click and the conversion, that all gets lost. Google Consent Mode is a little bit of a way around that, not a sneaky way around it. It's still respecting user consent, but this is just another mechanism from Google to help fill in some of that data loss and give back some of the data in the absence of not having the full amount of data. So let's just talk through the things you must have on your website in the first place. So before we even get into what consent mode is and what it does, let's just go through the checklist of what you should be doing on websites. So if you're a website owner, you need to be getting permission to drop cookies in the first place. So you will need a cookie banner in place that clearly outlines that you are collecting cookies on the website. It has you're clear in the statement that you put on there, and it has an easy ability to opt in and opt out of cookies if the user wishes to. So that's got to be made visibly and freely available on the website when you first land on the website. You also need to be providing cookie controls. So this is the ability to be able to opt out of cookies at any time. So the ability for me, if I change my mind later on as I'm browsing the website, I need to be able to go back and update my privacy and my cookie preferences. I can do that at any time. So you need to provide a link where the user can go back to adjust and update their cookie preferences. You're going to want to provide transparent information in your website's cookie policy. So you're going to want to list out all the details of the cookies that you are capturing on the website and what their purpose is for. So this was what will go into your cookie policy. Your cookie policy forms part of your broader privacy policy. Some people will choose to include their cookie policy as part of their privacy policy. Privacy policy is just more of a general kind of broader data consent document, basically, that you'll have listed on your website. And this is about how you deal with all information, not just cookies. So any personally collected information, your responsibilities as a website, how you manage that, where that data goes. So you'll need to make sure that you have an up-to-date privacy policy and a cookie policy. There are plenty of general kind of guides and rough templates you can follow out there to help ensure that you're kind of on the right track. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your own kind of legal interpretations and justifications for what you capture. So every privacy policy and every cookie policy should be unique to your own business. So don't just go, copy and pasting someone else's cookie policy from another website, because that's not really going to fly when it comes down to it. In the event that you were to be caught out, if any, data breach or anything like that happens, you'd want to make sure you're covered. So you want to make sure you've got these fundamentals in place right from the get-go anyway. How the consent process works generally. So you need to obtain a user's choice to grant or deny consent for storing the information about their behavior. So they've got to opt in or opt out to this in the first place. So that's got to be made freely available. You've then got the challenge of communicating that consent choice to the individual tags and pixels. So you've got to be able to tell Google, tell Facebook, the tags, the pixels that you have on your website about whether they're allowed to fire or not fire based on the user's consent choice. And this is where Google Consent Mode comes in. This is all part of that communication link. And then with that, you need to ensure that the tags that store or read cookies comply with the user's choice at all times, along with the ability to change consent settings at any time. So it's basically ensuring that all your marketing tags and pixels are abiding by consent choice at any one time. So as an example of obtaining consent, fundamentally, number one, you're going to want to make sure that you're actually obtaining consent in the first place. If you are going to be dropping cookies onto users' computers. So we want a clear notice about cookie usage, which will include link to further details, link to your cookie policy. So this has got to be kind of clear and present and available on the website when the user first arrives on your website. And at this point, no cookie should be fired until action is taken by the user. Okay, so this is really important. You obviously have to provide the opt-in and the opt-out options. You will see banners that will have an explicit opt-out. Absolutely fine, and that is the recommended advice. A lot of banners will also just then have the ability to be able to opt out via customizing your options. So there'll be an extra step to opting out. And that's really to do with avoiding, mass dropout rates, because typically what you'll see if you've got a cookie banner which has an accept and a reject, you're going to see about 75, higher than that, to be honest, 80% of users rejecting cookies. And that might be much, much higher. So in those instances where you're doing that, you're literally going to see your analytics data and your conversion data fall off a cliff because cookies aren't being dropped onto the website. So you'll often see banners put in this extra step to ensure that just to create that little bit more friction. So it's still legally that you still get around it, but if you're being whiter than white, then you need to have an explicit reject all, deny all button as well. The second aspect is then communicating consent. Okay, so this is where Google Consent Mode comes in. All Google Consent Mode is basically just a communication API that allows your tags to be able to communicate with Google services. So to allow your web banner, whatever you're using on the website, to talk to Google services. There's also an alternative framework as well called I forget what the IAB stands for. It's like Advertising Board something. The IAB's Transparency and Consent Framework pretty much does the same thing as Google Consent Mode, but is more generic. Google Consent Mode is really designed for Google products only, but can be used for non-Google tags as well. So what is it in a nutshell? So Google Consent Mode enables your website to communicate with Google tags to allow Google to dynamically adapt its tags based on what type of user consent is given. Okay, so this is there's a number of different signals and different types of data that Google stores, and Google is now breaking this down into a much more granular format. So if a user denies consent, tags will no longer store cookies, but will instead use other signals and bits of data that are non-personalized, non-identifiable, to allow basic data to be captured only. So this will help recover data in the absence where maybe cookies aren't available and cannot be used, as well as just coordinating your tags in general. So these signals are used by Google to then model conversions and adjust tags accordingly. So this would basically will enable different features of the Google product to activate and deactivate accordingly. So these are granular controls that communicate from your website sent to Google services that will turn on and turn off different features depending on what's been granted on the website. Consent mode currently supports the following Google services. So Google Analytics, Google Ads, compatible with Google Tag Manager, compatible with your Google Pixel, your GTag Pixel. And if you're running any like advanced display advertising, making use of floodlight conversion tracking, it will also be compatible with that also. So I want to just show you an example of how this looks in practice. So by default, tags aren't allowed to load on your website until consent is given by the cookie banner. So by default, everything should just be set to denied. So you have basically these commands that you see on screen here: ad storage, analytics storage. User will arrive on the website. At this point, no tags fired, and the consent status is set to denied. Once the user actually clicks on the allow and the accept, then an update is sent to Google Consent Mode to indicate that consent has been granted, and you'll then see the consent status update for each one of these different types of cookie, depending on what the user's actually opted into. So if I've allowed all, I'm allowing all cookies. These different types of cookie categories get green lighted and granted, and tags fire. In the example that consent is denied, so the user denies consent, declines, no new advertising cookies are written in red, but instead the advertising tags, the Google tags, will still send cookieless pings, and they'll make use of data modeling. So they'll basically try and guesstimate conversions without the use of cookies. So they'll use a whole range of other like signals and technology and data modeling methods in order to guesstimate whether that user who came to your website from that ad click and converted on your website actually is the same user. This is what's known as advanced consent mode. Okay, and this is generally what Google's consent mode is about. This is about the ability to still recover some data in the absence of cookies, while still respecting user consent choice. So no individual personal information is being sent, no individual IDs are being sent, limited data is being sent across, so Google does not have the same amount of information it does as when you do accept cookies. It just works around it in a different method. So we have these statuses that are going off. These all interact with your cookie banner. And yeah, Google will receive the cookieless pings. It'll receive ad interactions and online conversions. The data modeling aspect will be used by Google to try and guesstimate the conversions. The data modeling conversions that you receive, there are minimum thresholds for this. So if you're an advertiser that's only getting a few conversions anyway, there are certain thresholds stipulated by Google Ads, for example, where you need a certain amount of data to enable data modeling to be used in the first place. This is an illustration of what modeled conversions look like. So this is all in the absence of having cookies present on the website. So say if you've got like 1,000 ad clicks, 500 of those clicks are consented and the other 500 of them are unconsented. So whilst you've got consent, that's not a problem. Everything tracks as normal. You'll get your conversions in, you'll get, your conversion rates. You'll be able to see the data clearly. In the absence of consent, when someone does not want to share personal information, IDs, and release their cookies, Google will use Google Consent Mode, and it will use its data modeling to try and model and predict conversions. So out of those 500 clicks, you might end up with 9 data modeled conversions going into your account. So you'll recover some additional conversions. And again, these are all just kind of predicted guesstimates, but apparently Google have this down like pretty accurately. So you can be fairly confident that the model conversions are going to be reflective of reality. So what this will do for accounts that are running this, that do a consent mode active, they will have the benefit of getting these additional conversions reported. Okay, and this is all extra stuff that you just wouldn't have gotten if you didn't have consent mode in place in the first instance. So it helps you to try and recover some of the conversion loss that would occur from people opting out. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, that's consent mode, but what is this latest consent mode v2 all about? Okay, so it's kind of been made into a bigger deal than it perhaps actually is, because they're making it mandatory. So at the moment, consent mode currently has 2 different marketing consent categories. So they have the ad storage for like general advertising cookies. So this is your advertising cookies category. They have consent categories for analytics storage. So if you're using Google Analytics on your website, for example, statistics. What consent mode does, what the latest consent mode update v2 does is simply add 2 more parameters. So the mandatory things that are being required now are the ad user data and the ad personalization. So this is consent for personal data being used for advertising purposes and consent for remarketing purposes. Okay, so the ad personalization is the biggest one. Both of these parameters now need to be present on the website in order for you to make use of advertising audience targeting features in your Google ads. Okay, so if you're using Google Consent Mode already, so if you're aware that you're using Google Consent Mode already, chances are your provider that you're using has already updated you to Consent Mode v2, so that you have these signals available. Okay, these signals will look something like this, and this is a snapshot from Google Tag Manager for those that know. So this is a snapshot from the Analytics Debug tool, which is quite a handy tool actually for determining whether you have consent mode implemented or not. But these are the signals that are being sent across. You'll see all of the usual ones above there, so the ad storage, analytics storage, but right down at the bottom, you'll see the ad user data and the ad personalization ones. And those basically piggyback off of those other ad storage, ad storage consent signals. So these are just 2 extra parameters that get sent across, and you need to have them to enable audience targeting capabilities. So that is the takeaway today, making sure that you've got these 2 extra parameters being sent across with your consent banner. So it will end up looking something like this. So this is what was happening behind the scenes. So if now I like allow all and I opt in, I'm sending all the relevant consent signals with the ad user data and the ad personalization signals sent across also. Okay, so that is the important aspect. So getting set up with consent mode in the first place. So you're probably wondering, well, do I have this? And if I don't, how do I even get set up with this to get going? So to engage, so to do all of this stuff, you're going to need to make sure that firstly you have some kind of consent mechanism on the website. And by that, I mean like a consent banner. If you use a Google certified consent management platform, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these shortly, if you use a consent management platform tool, so basically a cookie tool on your website, you'll see your provider, your tool should automatically update to the newest version of consent mode. Okay, so if you're using something like, CookieBot, for example, or I trust. I've got a whole list. They will automatically update. So it might not be a problem for you. If you maintain your own banner, so say if you're doing something customized, your developers have built their own banner, and implemented their own consent, you will just need to make sure that you are sending, you have the Google scripts on the website and you are sending the right signals. My recommendation is that you use a cookie management platform. There you go. Cookie Pro, OneTrust, Cookie Yes. These are just some of like the main ones, and certainly ones that I've had familiarity with and experience with. Google does provide a full list of consent partners on its website. So if you go to like the CMP partner program, you'll see a full list on there of all the kind of Google compatible ones. It certainly makes life easier. So I'd recommend you all actually make use of a cookie management platform, because they do much more than just a pretty banner on your website. So, if you think about it, you have the obligation to not only like obtain consent and communicate consent, but you need to then log consent. So you need a consent log. You need tools to enable that banner to be converted into different languages. Should you load up if a French visitor is visiting your website, you're going to want to show that in the French language, for example. So you're going to want to have that auto translation built in. You're also going to want to be able to capture and scan all the cookies on your website as well. So the reasons to use a CMP is the geo-targeting nature of it, the fact that it can do the auto translation, the fact it uses cookie management. It can store the consent logs from all the users that have actually accepted cookies on the website. So you've got that record of who's opted in, who's opted out cookies. That's an important thing of GDPR, for example, that record keeping. You've got secure content storage. You've got the ability to be able to generate your own cookie policy pages. So these CMPs offer a lot of handy tools to make things easier. So all settings, cookies, and scripts are managed via one handy interface. So this is where, you'll be able to design your banner, you'll be able to update your settings, add extra domains, change your designs, add in different stipulations about cookies, choose where you want your cookie banner to show, etc., etc. So all the different providers have their own different interfaces and methods for how you do things, but they all generally function the same. The example you're seeing on screen is a one that we use, CookieBot, which is, having used most of the others, is my seems to be doing like the best job of handling this all. So CookieBot is my personal preference. So they will allow you to do things like cookie banner template design. They'll give you the ability to be able to manage cookies at any time. So there'll be a clear link to where you can actually go back and actually update your preferences. And remember, that's an important thing to do also, to make that available to users. So they offer those features. They'll generate your cookie policy for you. And keep this up to date with any current cookies that get detected and added. And they'll do the record keeping part for future use if you just to keep yourself covered. They provide statistics, and on top of that, much more. So very handy tool to do, to have. If you're not using one of these tools, then you've kind of got to self-manage your stuff yourself. You'll have to make sure you've got all the boxes ticked, and you're collecting things in the right way. So you'll essentially be kind of having to build your own tool in the back end anyway if you don't use one of these platforms. So these are just becoming the norm now to use. When it comes to actual implementation, you've got a few options. So you can do this via Google Tag Manager. You can do this via like a WordPress plugin or something, or Shopify plugin. Or you can, if you want to, you can go down the installing via on-page code. My personal preference is to lean on Google Tag Manager, because most of the time clients have their tags located in a Google Tag Manager system, where all of the tags are being managed via one centralized system. So in that sense, it makes most logical sense to use a Google Tag Manager, and in that way you've got that integration, and you've got everything there in one place. But it's also okay to implement via a plugin and do it on page also. So you've got some options there. Most of these CMPs will offer auto blocking cookie features. So it will scan for your cookies, it will automatically categorize, it will do all of the hard work for you. So it's very much like hands off. There's a little bit of kind of setup, but then after that, the CMP will take care of this stuff for you and automatically detect and categorize cookies for use for things like Google Consent Mode. If you are using Google Tag Manager, certain things will need to be configured separately in there. So if you do have all your pixels in Google Tag Manager, you want to do things a little bit differently. You want to make sure that things aren't necessarily being blocked, and you want to make sure that Google Tag Manager is doing the blocking instead and the controlling. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how this actually looks in practice. So I'm just going to come out of this. I'm going to bring up. So the tool we use is CookieBot, for example. So you can take a free trial out of this. They offer free trials. You could do this with any other tool as well. Most do offer a free trial. But basically, like any kind of SaaS service, you sign up to it. You create like logins, and then once you're inside it, you'll have the ability, step-by-step guide to get everything configured. So at this point, you'll be able to enter in your domain. You'll be able to design your banner, how you want it to look, where you want it positioned, design preferences, things like that. There'll be a whole bunch of like different settings in here that you can take a look at. You'll have your declaration wording, so you can update the wording in your banner at any point. Provide you with the ability to be able to fully customize the banner itself. And then once you're finished with that, you'll be provided with a script. And this is your banner script that controls obviously the banner, and then will also load the consent signals as well, because those are built into this. So basically, you'll want to get this code either manually placed onto the website, or you want to use something like Google Tag Manager. So Google Tag Manager, for example, which is my kind of recommended method. Most of these providers now provide tags and templates for you to use. So what you need to do is go and find the relevant one. So CookieBot, for example, provide a built-in tag already. So if I want to put this banner on the website, there's already a built-in pixel for that. And all I need to do is come into here. I need to grab the relevant ID from my account. I need to go into this. I need to put the cookie ID in here. I then got the option to enable a whole bunch of like other things, but to be honest, I don't need much more than that. A critical thing I need to do here is enable consent mode. The triggering of this is also pretty important. So we want this to be the first thing that loads because this is our banner. No matter how you install it, whether it's on your website in the code or via Google Tag Manager, you want your cookie banner to be the first thing that loads on your website. So for this, there is already a built-in trigger. And for those that are interested, it's called the consent initialization trigger. That is the first one you need. So this will load the default state of your banner. So I give this tag a name, cookie bot consent banner. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit that as test. I hit save. That is in there already. That will get the cookie banner onto the website. So if I, for example, preview this now. So let's. Let me just. I'm just going to pause that because I've already got it on the website already. I'm just going to pause it. I was only for demonstration purposes. So now if I preview this on my website, okay, and okay, the banners, don't think the banner's coming up. So the banner is working in the background. The reason why you're not seeing it here is because I've already accepted previously. So let me just delete my cookies. You should see the banner pop up.
Ed, I think you might need to go back a stage because you've got quite a lot of newbies in here. So if you could just sort of quickly explain what Google Tag Manager is again, and then also the tag assist that you're using, because just listening to what you're saying, I think some of them might not quite get that bit.
Yeah, I mean, Google Tag Manager is something I could do a whole webinar on anyway, but it's a recommended tool for managing all of the pixels that you have on your website. So whether you want to use consent mode or not, whatever your pixel, Google Tag Manager it's a free tool from Google to enable you to deploy and manage the website pixels on your website. It's a very, very good tool for that. So rather than having lots of individual pieces of code all across your website that have to be managed at different times, you can just manage everything from one interface. So I can have my Facebook tags, my Google Ads tags, my Google Analytics, my LinkedIn, my Twitter conversion tags, for example, all in one interface where I can set the firing rules and manage different settings of those tags. And as part of it, I can also implement my cookie bot, my cookie banner through Google Tag Manager also. So you'll see now that my banner is up, and I'm just having a look at the settings here. So the consent is available, and if I go into consent mode here, so if I go into,
could you just explain about the tag assist that you're using?
Okay, so yeah, so what I've done here, if you're in Google Tag Manager and you want to preview how your tags are working and your cookie banner, you can just hit the preview button, and that will bring up your website, and you can go through your website and browse, and then what will happen is that it will bring up all of the tags that are firing at different points on your website. And this is a demonstration of how the consent banner is working. So I can see the consent status is denied for this. And then if I then move on to allowing, so if I'm happy with cookies being used, I'm going to click allow. And at this point, what will happen is there will be another update. And at this point, my consent categories will have changed from denied to granted. And you'll also see in this instance that I've got the ad user data and the ad personalization options granted also. And this has all been done automatically. I've enabled consent mode through the cookie banner tool. And these signals are automatically being sent into Google Tag Manager. So this tool is compatible with Google Tag Manager. So these signals are already being sent across. So there's very little work that I've had to do here to actually get this all set up and configured. So those are firing. So each time my page loads now, so if I go to different pages, those consent statuses will remain. So I'm going from page to page here. Here's the next page I loaded. And if I go to here, you'll see that it remains. Now, if I want to opt out, and this is what I was talking about earlier in enabling people to have the ability to opt out, you need to have a link somewhere, whether it's in your footer or elsewhere. In this instance, I've got a little floating link right here that that Cookiebot has provided. So if I click on this link in this left-hand corner, it will load up this. And now if I want to, I can withdraw consent. So only necessary cookies will fire now. And now what will happen is that that update request has been sent into Google Tag Manager. And you will now see that the current state has been denied. So I went from denied to granted to back to denied. And if I was to change it again, it would update again.
So this is really useful for people like us who will be able to check other people's cookies. But most of you, all you need to do is implement the cookie platform management system to make sure that your website's compliant. If you don't think you can do that yourself because you don't know how to do Google Tag Manager, or you're not a developer, or you feel that this is all a bit scary, then you need to pay somebody like us or your web developer to do it, because it is part of GDPR compliance that you have got a consent, cookie consent that actually works. Because a lot of them, what happens is I think Ed mentioned right at the beginning, people stick a cookie consent policy up there. You go to that website, you reject it, but you're still being tracked anyway. And so therefore you could be, you get lots of scam letters and people trying to say, you're not compliant, pay us 500 quid or we'll go and tell the ICO, the Information Commission. So it's really, really important that if you have a website, you are compliant with this, because they are getting much more tough on checking it. And the reason we're telling you all about this today, and Ed's going through the detail, is that some of you can do this yourself, but most people just aren't aware that things are changing and that you need to upgrade to this more advanced mode, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, so the cookie management, signing up to a cookie management platform, that will cover you for most things. So my recommendation is to do that. If you are using Google Tag Manager, there is a little bit more work to do, because you need to a little bit of experience in understanding how the tags in your account are controlled, and you need to ensure that they are abiding by consent. So for those that may be a little bit familiar with Google Tag Manager, just generally, the Google tags that you actually have within your account. So if you've set up Google Analytics, you set up Google Ads, for example, these particular tags, if I just show you an example, these particular tags have a built-in consent already. Okay, so Google tags have a built-in consent already, so they're already listening out for the advertising signals to be set. So if you're sending them on the website, the Google tags will fire regardless, but personal data will not be sent. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Your Google ads, if you're using consent mode, your Google ads, your Google tags in general will respect consent, so they automatically. So they have this built in automatically. For tags that are not Google, so for non-Google tags, so take your LinkedIn, for example, these require something. So these don't have built-in consent, so you actually have to tell the tag what it actually needs. So for this, you actually need to manually specify when this tag can fire. So for LinkedIn, for example, it's still an advertising tag, so it requires the ad storage to fire. So as long as that is given, this tag will fire. But I've had to stipulate specifically that this tag requires ad storage. Whereas with the Google tags, they already had the built-in consent, so I didn't have to do anything with those. I didn't have to touch those too much. So.
Have you got a lot of slides left? Because there's a lot of questions, and I just wondered whether to let you carry on, because I didn't want to.
So that's where I am with that. We've got this kind of documented out in this slide handouts from a Google Tag Manager perspective. From an on-site perspective, if you're implementing this code outside of Google Tag Manager, the code is very much the nature of the code is very much the same. The function is the same, but you'll need to actually place specific Google consent mode script onto your website. So this is a summary I'm leaving you with. So review your consent banner setup in the first instance. So do you have a banner? Are you obtaining consent from users? Number two, are your pixels and tags abiding by the consent status? So even if you have a banner, are your pixels and tags actually abiding by the consent correctly? Number three, understanding where your pixels are located. So do you have your pixels implemented on page itself? Do you have them implemented via, say, something like a WordPress plugin? Are you using a Google Tag Management tool to deploy your pixels? So have an understanding of where your pixels are located currently. Number four, determine whether Google Consent Mode is implemented for your tags. So obviously, if you do have your tags in place, you have a banner in place, you need to determine whether Google Consent Mode is implemented for your tags. That's where it kind of gets a little bit more technical, because you need to know what to look for in those to know whether consent mode is implemented, especially if you're not using Google Tag Manager. Number five, are you clearly stating how and what cookies are being used on your website? So making sure you've got your wording right on the banner, you've got your privacy policy, your cookie policy in place. Make sure you're clearly stating what you're using there. And number six, are you providing sufficient means to allow users to manage cookies? So can I opt out of consent at any time whilst on your website, for example? So yeah, so the main takeaway is make sure, understand if you're using a tool and you have consent mode in general on your website. And then if so, make sure you are using the latest version of consent mode. And this is all important if you want to, firstly, stay compliant. And secondly, if you want to make use of those advertising features, because it's the advertising features, the audience targeting capabilities that will stop working if you do not have consent by March time. So you've got a few weeks really to understand whether you're using consent mode version 2 on your website. Okay, and that's my takeaway. So quite a lot there. It is technical business, guys. So apologies if you did lose some of that, but hopefully I've pointed you in in the right directions for where to, maybe find out more information, or maybe, I just bolstered your overall understanding a bit more. So hopefully that was helpful for you.
Okay, we've got lots of questions
Q&A.
here.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to put up a quick thank you for Ed, because it's really important that we get some love from you guys, because it helps with our own marketing. Also, I did just leave the inquiries at email. It's actually quite a lot of work to set this up. If you've got so it's about, we're charging £1,000 for people if they want us to set it up for you, because probably you won't have a Google Tag Manager. We need to set up the consent mode, and then we need to make sure it's all tracking properly and the tags are firing correctly. So although Ed's made it sound, well, depending on how technical you are, he's made it sound like there's only a few steps. It's actually a sort of a day or more work. Okay, so my first question to Ed, Shopify. I have a sneaking suspicion that Shopify have got their own version of this, haven't they? And that they've got their own cookie consent mode in there themselves.
So yeah, it's a real kind of mix, to be honest. And in most cases, the built-in Shopify Shopify plugin I've seen does not have consent mode implemented. So whether this is something they're kind of going to be looking to update themselves shortly and make available, but at the moment the Shopify cookie management system just has its own auto blocking capabilities, and I believe it doesn't even have any compatibility with Google Tag Manager. I know that quite a few of these tools do provide guides for how to install the code within Shopify, so that you can get, say, like the cookie bot banner onto a Shopify site, and it requires implementing their code and putting it into the theme files within the Shopify system. So you need to have access to that code. But Shopify is definitely one of the more trickier ones, where I'm surprised there's not more solutions for. The plugins available for it seem pretty limited. So if there's anyone out there that has can recommend a decent Shopify plugin, then I'm definitely all ears for that.
Somebody asked a similar question about WordPress, and if there's a WordPress plugin that does this.
Lots, yeah. WordPress is a lot more, lot more open. There's lots available. Some better than others.
By Google for consent mode version 2? Because I did give the link earlier on to Google the page within Google, so people could check.
So most of those providers will provide you with a plugin as well. So most of them offer like WordPress plugins if you want to use plugin. Again, if you're using Google Tag Manager yourself, you're going to want to just implement this stuff via Google Tag Manager. You do have the plugin option, and there's lots more plugins available for WordPress than there is for Shopify. So yeah, some are better than others. So I don't have a go-to list, but maybe I could get something set up afterwards. Some banners I've found on WordPress to be absolutely rubbish. I'll do the banner, but they won't have any kind of consent signals built into it.
So what we mean by that is, and I think this is the problem, is that a lot of them, they just put a banner up. You say yes or no, but it doesn't actually change anything behind the scenes. So it's not integrated to your actual tracking, and therefore you think you're compliant, but you're not. Is that the situation?
There's parts of that. Yeah, they've been found to maybe be sending the wrong signals, or not always blocking cookies correctly in the right way. So a lot of them will just do like the auto blocking stuff and just block GA cookies automatically until the banner's clicked, but they won't do the advanced consent mode. They won't do they might not have the latest consent mode features, which you're going to need for these new tags if you want to make use of the audience targeting we were talking about. So yeah, it's a real mixed bag, to be honest. It seems like the tool providers are still playing catch up with all of this. Google launched this news just before Christmas to say that businesses need to be up to date with consent mode. This is what needs to be sent. And meanwhile, even the tools themselves were still playing kind of catch up with this. So at the moment, it's about finding a tool that ticks all the boxes that just does this. And that itself can be a bit tricky, but you want to find a tool that has ideally Google consent mode built into it. Okay, so it's Google consent mode ready.
Yeah, Kevin's in race because we've had a couple of clients said, "Oh, bloody hell, Anne, I've had somebody threaten me with 500 quid." Kevin's written a nice, long, well-spelt post. I typed too quickly. It's actually quicker and cheaper to actually fix it than it is to deal with these people. So the general thing to do is to say is to either ignore them or fix it, and then by the time they come back to you, because it's done on a spam. It's just somebody with a bit of scraping software, and they're basically trying to see whether you're compliant. And we've had quite big clients that we're going through a list of all of ours now. I don't think you've mentioned about Google threatening to shut ad accounts down, have you? Because that was one of the reasons that triggered our suddenly, oh God, we need to sort this for all of our clients.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Anne. So yeah, having the banner on the website, having the correct wording, being clear about the types of advertising cookies, specifically with regards to personalized cookies, is actually becoming really important with Google Ads. And we found, we're seeing more and more accounts now be picked up by Google. If you want to run advertising, you want to make sure that you have that you are ticking these consent boxes, and you do have clear wording, you do have a cookie policy on your website, and you do have these things in place. So that's before you even, get into consent mode. This is just making sure you got the basics right. Google are now scanning websites, looking at your website to make sure that you have some of these basics in place before you can even start running ads. So just bear that in mind, that this thing isn't going to go away. So if you haven't got a banner and stuff in place now, you're behind the curve, and you really need to just kind of get on board with that and just accept.
And Rosalind's asking, just because we're concerned about it from not getting your Google accounts banned, you still are not in compliant with GDPR if you do not have the cookie consent. Yeah. And whereas for the last 4 years we've been getting away with it, actually now I don't think you can get away with it for much longer. So this is basically saying that things are getting much tougher out there. Yeah. I'm just concerned we've gone over 10 and I've got another meeting to go to. So I think we're going to have to call it a day. If any of you have got any queries, if you want to, it's probably best to message me or and go through the inquiries, because Ed's working part-time at the moment. So if you could possibly, and if any of you are interested in us helping you, then if you want to go to inquiries@anika.co.uk. I can't type it in without the space, otherwise it screws it up. But thanks very much, everybody. That's been a great session, and you'll get the video in a couple of hours. And if you've got any questions, come back to us. But thanks a lot, Ed. I know that hopefully I've answered everybody, but I'm sure that I might have missed a few. So if I haven't been able to answer your question, I do apologise. And if you need to message us, please do. Excellent. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye. Thanks, guys. See you next Friday. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.